Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. This is Andy Traub. Sten is not here with us today. If you're watching us on YouTube, you figured that out already because this guy does not look like Sten. Equally as handsome, this guy. Equally as handsome. So I am joined today by Skye Richardson, and Skye is an expert in all things copy, I would say, specifically email marketing. We're going to talk about today on a different show Sten and I are working on. Which Skye, remind me after our recording today, I need to pick your brain about this as well. But we're going to talk about copy on websites because most of them are boring and are not very effective. But today we're going to talk about email marketing, and we're going to talk about Skye's company that he has I think, a unique way of delivering his product, and it's almost the exact opposite of what you would assume given the purpose of the product. So I'll dangle that out a little bit longer. But Skye, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Andy, I appreciate you having me. And I think we're going to have a helpful and a necessary conversation around a topic that I think a lot of people kind of maybe don't want to touch because they don't know how to approach it. And so, I'm looking forward to
it. It reminds me of like this. My wife and I were doing a vegetable garden for a while when we lived in a different state. And we just weren't very good at it. And so we just sort of like let it go. And then it eventually died. And then, like that's how most people treat email marketing. That's how most people treat sort of outreach is I'm just going to ignore it because it's so ugly and sort of unruly that I'm just going to sort of just hope that it goes away or I'll just work on other things. But here's something that fascinates me, and I think I want everyone listening or watching us on YouTube to consider this, which is that there are people, and if I'm wrong, please email us, stenmorgan.com/podcast, tell me I'm wrong. There are people, and I would say a vast majority of people that, we subscribe to via email and we read almost every single one we get. And a vast majority of people also are in their inbox multiple dozens sometimes times a day, and yet there's so many advisors who just struggle with the idea of using email marketing. So if you could just give us big picture, why does email still matter when it comes to prospecting and continuing to build up your credibility and build trust with potential clients and current clients?
Yeah, I think email is something. So, I mean, the big elephant in the room is email doesn't have that same appeal when you say it as like social media. Everyone wants to talk about social media and platforms. And I've got nothing against social media. I think it can be a powerful platform. The thing about email is it's like the bread and butter of marketing. I mean, you look back at the origins of the internet, really. What was there? I mean, you had email.
I know it was there because I was there.
Yeah.
I remember it was AOL chat rooms.
Yeah.
It was a little disc in the mail from AOL. It was logging in with the weird sound,
Had your minutes that you could log on for.
500 minutes, right?
Right.
And yeah, it was chat rooms, and then you got an email address, an AOL, a Hotmail, and it was a lot of text communication because that's really, that was as much as the internet could handle. What I just think is fascinating is I'm in agreement, and I think that most of our audience, I don't think they need to be convinced. I think most of our audience is, I'm going to make a guess, but I think I'm right. They're kind of over social media. Like, I think there's maybe some power in LinkedIn, but I just think the idea that we're going to throw money into Facebook ads, I'm sure it works for some people. But if you said, Andy, you could only put your money on one thing, I'd put it on email marketing. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think the numbers back up what you say too, because it's like, I mean, you can look at any study you want. I forget what the numbers are, but it's whenever you see the studies on email and the ROI is pretty insane. I mean, it's like I think one of the stats that we commonly talk about is like I think it's $42 to every $1 spent on email. And I would just say from personal experience, that's probably true. I don't know what the exact number is, but I do know that email works and email still works. Mm-hmm. And the reason, Andy, if I kind of had to put my thought on it, is email still your inbox is still a very intimate place in terms of communication. Like,
I would agree. And you know why I agree with that? Because people can email me and piss me off.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
like if it's on my Facebook wall, I'm like, whatever. It's fine. It's not, if it's a YouTube recommendation, no. But if somebody, this is weird. I don't know. People listen. Tell me if you jive with this. But like, someone will send me an email. Like, we'll get pitched for this show. Mike Johnson would be great to be on your show. And I'll just respond no, because I'm so like offended that they didn't take the time to like. So when you sent me a pitch for this show, like you were thorough. You said, "Hey, I listened to the show. Here's what I like about it." I was like, "Oh, this is a real person, and he really listens to the show, and he really has an expertise to add." Like that's all I need for people to be on the show. By the way, if you're listening, you want to be on our show. Like you need to be a real person. You need to have an expertise. You need to listen to the show before and know how you can actually help. But people get in there, or it's like I got added to some marketing thing. It was spam, and I'm like mad. I'm like, how do they get my email address? You know what I mean? So yeah, right. It is very intimate, and for that same reason, it can also be really positive. I got an email response from someone the other day that said, "I really, really liked this email," and it was a marketing email. You know what I mean? So tell me, if it's an intimate place, if it can be effective, let's talk about your expertise in helping advisors. How exactly do you help advisors, Scott?
Yeah. So we need to rethink the way that we send an email. We need to rethink, because here's what I'll say. The problem that I see in our industry, like you said, a lot of people believe in email, but I see all of these pre-canned emails that maybe your broker dealer, your FMO, or your IMO, somebody gave you, and they're always the same thing, right? It's like Happy Thanksgiving from Richardson Wealth Management.
Yeah.
And it's like,
so let me actually interrupt real quick if I would, because I'm my job is to think like the person listening right now, and they just came up with an objection. And I want to figure out if it's a real problem or if it's a created objection. Okay. So, because you're the expert on this and you deal with hundreds and hundreds of advisors every month who are taking your stuff and implementing. And one of them is that I can only send those emails. That's why I hate those emails too, but that's all I can send. So how do you get around and send effective emails if you put a reason in place? Hey, I can't get around that. How do you get around that?
I mean, the short of it, without this being the entire episode of talking about compliance and marketing,
we will
is
never have another episode where we talk about compliance, because that would be the worst. That'll be the least listened to episode ever. Like I should test
nobody
that
wants
compliance, you know?
Yeah, that's not the way to get people to listen. But I mean, the short of it is compliance really, and it differs. Okay, every compliance department, but compliance does not want to be your enemy. You have to think like compliance. What is compliance trying to do? Compliance is trying to protect their brand.
Absolutely.
And they're trying to save their brand. What I have found, because I've had this objection a ton, people are like, I could never send this email. Find out what you're allowed to say and work with them and be in communication and view them on your team. Yeah. And you will be amazed at how much more leeway they allow you to have when you come at it from that perspective. So that's the short answer, Andy.
Yep. And Sten talks about this. He says, when you come to your compliance department, don't say, I'm going to do this. Say, how can we do this? And that's a how, which is an assumption of it will be done, right? Not can, right? Can I do this? Or I'm going to do this, which is too forceful. But how can we as we're on the same team, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I do think there are literally compliance people that wake up every day and they want to ruin people's lives. But I think a vast majority of them, I'm joking a little, but I think a vast majority of them really are just like, hey, I'm just here. Like I saw a guy get pulled over on the way to work today. That police officer maybe has some joy in that, but more like they're just there to do their job. They're there to protect people, right? And sometimes they're there to protect advisors from themselves, right? So first is go to them and say, how can we do this? On a really practical level, I mean, there's so many things I want to talk about, but on a practical level, can I ask you to just maybe talk about what kind of emails people can send, and then maybe give them a quick framework for how they could actually do that? Because it's really powerful, because it taps into things that are true of people in the 1800s, and it'll be true of people in the 2200s. You know, it's this idea of story, right? So what emails are effective?
Yeah. So I'll set it up like this is, we've been taught over and over as advisors, always be closing, always be closing, always be selling. Like that's the big, over the decades, we've been told. The way to win with email is to always be engaging, like always be engaging. And that doesn't mean you can't sell, but you have to build up this, I kind of picture it like this ATM of, you've got to put deposits in order to be able to take withdrawals out. And one way not going to tell you it's the only way. There's dozens of ways to be effective with email. One of the most powerful ways I've found for advisors to be engaging with email is to tell stories. And stories resonate on I mean, I think everyone here knows that stories are part of our DNA way back, right? I mean, I know you and I have talked about, folks like Donald Miller do a really good job of talking about stories and marketing and all of that. The challenge is, how do you tell very short and engaging stories in an email format? Because we don't have we're not Hollywood directors with 90 minutes to kill to tell a story, right? And so that's where I help advisors a lot is, if we can create a format, a formula. I love formulas. I love, especially in email, if we can create formulas that make it easier for us to communicate effectively in an engaging way, that's how we can approach this topic of email, where we're like, oh, I don't know what to do. And we can show up, we can write effective and engaging emails. So
I had jury duty. I'm in this jury duty. I don't know how they do it and where you live. You're South Carolina, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever had jury duty in South Carolina?
I have evaded it so far.
Oh, no. It's great. It's a civic duty. I'm happy to do it. I really am. But the way they do it in Tennessee is you're on for 6 months. You don't go every day, but like for 6 months, you could be called. Okay. And they call and you go and whatever. But the last time I was at jury duty, I didn't get picked. They call like 60 people and they only need 12 or 13. But I'm there and I'm doing this like fill in the blank color thing where it's like, the number 4 and you fill all the 4 with this color and then all the 3s in this color. And when I was done, I was like, this is beautiful. It's like art. But it tricked me because it was literally just like paint by number. And I think like that's what I thought of when you said, you just need formulas. Like it works. It can be art. It works. It can be effective storytelling if you follow the formula, right? And so I want to take away that fear. So tell people the framework that you teach. I love it.
Yeah, it's super simple. And this is something that I learned from a successful entrepreneur. Perry Belcher taught me this framework and I love it. I've used it a lot since. I've taught a lot of advisors how to use it, and it's very adaptable. And so all it is how do we create a simple story framework? And I'll tell you the framework, and then I'll kind of give you an example here.
Yeah.
And the framework, all it is you say, I was here. Number 1, I was doing this.
Number 2
is the second part.
Yeah.
When this happened, so something happens, and suddenly I realized, there's a realization. So I did this. So I was here doing this. You're setting a scene. I was doing something. You're giving an action. When something happened, and it made me realize. So I did this, and you'll see this.
I have to admit something, Sky. I kind of tried to trick the audience because I just did that. So I was here. I was at jury duty. I was doing this. I was doing paint by number. This happened. I had this realization that if you follow formula, right, and then I realized, it's that framework. And what's so cool about storytelling, and I want people to really hone in on this, and this is why what Sky's talking about is so effective. And it's a weird connection, but follow me. So how many times are you somewhere and you hear someone talking, they got their earbuds in, just like I do with the earbuds, and you only hear half the conversation. And it's fine. It's not rude. Now the FaceTime in public, that's rude. That needs to end, right? But the whole half the conversation, our brains hate that. Our brains, like, you have a really hard time concentrating when you only hear half the conversation because your brain wants to hear the whole story. It wants to know what's going on. And what Sky's going to teach you today about this is that you can do this in a very concise way, but our brains, our hearts, our minds are compelled. They're wired. They're designed to hear the whole story. So once you get the start of the story, you got them, right? And same way we want to hear the whole conversation, otherwise our brain is sort of tripped up. People want to hear the whole story. That's, it's a classic when you're a little kid, it's like, oh, I want to hear the rest of the story. I'll tell you tomorrow. Oh, no, tell me the whole thing now. Adults are the same way. We want to hear the whole story. So give me some examples of this, Guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, and kind of along the lines of that, Andy, I think about, you're in the heart of, I don't know what kind of music you listen to. You're at least close to the heart of country music. And in terms of geographically,
got a lot of country around here. Yeah.
Yeah. I think about, country artists, whether you're listening to this and you're like, I hate country, or you're like, kind of get down with it. Country artists are the best at doing this.
Absolutely.
In their intro of their song,
amazing.
You think about
So
Like
good.
I think about Garth Brooks, like
Ugh.
Friends in Low Places. Like just listen to the
No,
opening
Thunder
stanza.
Rolls, man. Thunder Rolls. That's the best story. You're like,
That is a
whoa.
that'll give you chills. That story.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
think about like the opening to Friends in Low Places, where it's like blame it all on my roots. I showed up in boots, ruined your black
Yeah.
tie
Yeah.
affair. The last one to
Yeah.
know, the last one to show. I was the last one you thought you'd see there. Like
Boom.
talk
We
about
have set the scene, my
like
friends. We got the man in
like
boots,
something's
right?
about to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of an aside, but I think about like if you want to learn good stories, just listen to like opening stanzas of country
That's right.
music.
Yeah. Just find Spotify, type in country, and go, okay, I get it
Yeah,
now.
yeah. But
But
I'll
yeah, the
give you kind
power
of
also, the power is they do that in 3 minutes. They do that in 4 minutes.
yes.
And so that's what we're going to talk about people being able to do today. And we'll talk at the end about other ways you can connect with Sky in his newsletter. But keep going here.
Yeah. So I mean, like kind of building off the framework that I'm giving you, like I'll give you an example of an email that that an advisor and I wrote together recently that followed this exact framework here.
Okay.
And I want you to, as you're listening to this, everyone, I want you to think about, don't get so caught up in listening to the actual details of this story and all of that. Like think about the framework that I'm telling you. Think
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
framework and think about how you can adapt this year. So here it is. It was this is the actual email that was sent. It says, I was in line at my local coffee shop last month getting ready to order a fresh cup of coffee. I was thinking about ordering one of the blueberry scones too that they were advertising on the chalkboard. It's something I only do on rare occasions. Because it was still early in the morning, there really weren't a whole lot of people inside. But suddenly, out of nowhere, this eager elderly man popped up behind me and said, "Good morning, how are you doing?" We chatted for several minutes about what we do and quickly struck up an unlikely and impromptu conversation. And before parting ways, we swapped business cards and told each other to keep in touch. And as I was walking away, I heard the man call my name. He said, "Thanks. I really enjoyed sharing a cup of coffee with you." And it was at that moment that I realized we hadn't just shared a conversation, we shared a meal together. I could see how much it meant to that man. And all of a sudden I felt it too. It was nice to share conversation with someone with no agenda. And we chatted and got to know one another for a few brief moments. And ever since then, I've made it a point to strike up a conversation with strangers. Sometimes the conversations are super enjoyable. Other times they just brush me off. But either way, I find it refreshing. If you'd like to ever chat about life, money, retirement, even just, what's going on in life, I'm always here.
Right.
It's the end of the year.
Here, let me do that real quick. Here, coffee shop, in line.
Yep.
Doing this, standing in line. This happened. Older gentleman strikes up a conversation. Conversation continues, and then suddenly, he thanks him for the conversation, for sharing a meal. Suddenly he realizes, hey, I should engage with more people like that more often. So I do this, which is number 5. You do engage in more conversations. Sometimes they go well, sometimes they don't, but that's the story. Let me ask a practical question about the use of email. I think that a lot of advisors feel a pressure to be professional. And by that, I mean not go personal, not tell a whole lot of stories. They're afraid of any sort of story because they feel like it's got to be about market performance, or, you can't send out emails that say, I helped Bob, with this great annuity and you should get one too. Like, that's just not going to work. Right. So in what context, and maybe it's building trust over time, or I'm trying to remember the word you used, about having an impact with someone over time. But how do you effectively use these stories in order to take someone who maybe got on your list through an ad, or maybe they came in to visit once, or they came to a client event 6 years ago? How are these stories leading you to being able to have an opportunity to work with someone?
Yeah. So I actually like, if you're someone who has an email list and you're like, haven't used I don't ever touch it, or if I do, it's only when it's salesy, or I'm only using like the pre-canned Happy Thanksgiving things. What I would recommend doing is kind of starting it off and teeing it up and letting people know, like I call this a re-engagement email. If you haven't touched your email list in a while, send out a re-engagement email and be honest about what you're doing. Like, be honest, like, hey, I haven't done a very good job of keeping in touch with you. We met back whenever, and I haven't done a great job, but over the next month, I'm actually going to be, I want to start telling a little bit more of my story. And so just kind of keep an eye on your inbox, and you can kind of set it up like that, very casually. Like let them know exactly what you're doing. You'll be surprised how receptive people are when you let them know, hey, I'm about to peel back the curtain a little bit, and I'm about to show you a little bit more of who I am. And so I would start by doing that, Andy. And then what I would do is maybe tee it up every 3 or 4 days at first. I would just start sharing a story, start sharing a story of what happened. You don't have to put a ton of pressure on yourself. Like great story ideas, Andy, like are super simple. Like what was one of your first experiences with money? What's the funniest thing that happened to you this week? I mean, you told multiple stories on this podcast already of the cop, you were going to work this morning, you saw the cop pull over you, jury duty. Like talk about the little things that happen. I always tell people, if you're married or you have a spouse or a partner or something, you know how when you're apart all day and you've been doing your own things, you always kind of have those stories where like, oh, I need to tell my wife that, or I need to tell.
Yeah, because when they say, how was your day? You've got a story queued up. If nothing happened, you're like, man, nothing happened today. Or you could go, hey, recorded a podcast with this guy today, whatever it might be. But you're going to go to a story because stories are what, you're not going to go, well, at 6 o'clock, I arrived. At 6:30, I parked my car. You know what I mean? Like that, we tell a story. We find a story and we connect with it. So let me ask this question as it relates to advisors saying, I want to use email more effectively. I'm comfortable re-engaging. Are there different tracks, or what are the different tracks for, let's say you've got people are clients. How can you effectively use email to keep them engaged and connected with you so you're top of mind for referrals, or just, hey, I care about you and I want to continue to serve you, and I want to just talk about the market with you because you're probably bored by that. And then the potential prospects that maybe they met with you once and they didn't do anything, or maybe they signed up for a lead magnet on your website or something like that. So take me for those two tracks, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. How do you treat those two different people?
Yeah, I mean, that goes to the whole topic of like, be really good at, when you're collecting email addresses, of not just collecting them all in one bucket. We call it we call it segmenting. We call it segmenting prospects. Be intentional about where you collect. And this is where it's helpful to have a really good email platform. They're inexpensive, or if you have a CRM, be really good at tagging your prospects, so that, to your point, you can communicate differently. Because someone who has been on, someone that you picked up through a lead magnet that you've never had a conversation with, those are the kind of people that I like to drip these stories on, particularly because we're in a virtual world. We want to be people want to know who you are. They want it, like, as much as, you have to decide how much you're going to be willing to let people in. But these stories, these little bite-sized stories every few days, build that relationship where it's not just, hey, I downloaded 7 reasons I need an annuity PDF. Now it's, oh, I also understand that you've got kids and they play baseball, or I also understand that you love country music, or you like whatever it is. And then when you go for the ask, because I always tell people 8 out of 10 emails should be non-promotional, should not have a call to action, a major call to action. Then every maybe 10th email, every 9th or 10th email, that's when you can come in with a call to action and with a, hey, I've got a webinar coming up, or, hey, I've got a couple openings on my calendar. Let's chat. And by that point, you've built up enough of that deposits in the ATM that you can make that withdrawal that we talked about.
Let me give folks just an idea of the effectiveness of this. And I'll just share some examples from our company, the Elite Advisor Network. These I think would translate to other people's situations. Let's just say you want to have a client event, or you want to have a webinar where you're going to teach people, virtually. As an example, and I won't give you the numbers for our list, but I'll give you the percentages. When we send an email out, we get a 40 to 50% open rate, which is phenomenal for open rates. But we're mostly just sending out our podcasts, right? This to our email list. So I think that is non-promotional. I think that's value. Okay. So when we did have a webinar recently, and we sent that out, we still got the same open rates. And then what happened is, on the click-throughs, I think we ended up with about a 20% click-through. So those are people that registered for the webinar. For those who registered for the webinar, this is yesterday, it's probably higher now. As of this morning, 75% of the people that I sent this email to had opened it up, and I think 25% had clicked on it. So the idea of a 75% open rate, it's like, how do you do that? And it's because it was a targeted list of a targeted list, right? That's why it was segmented twice, right? So it's our whole list, and then it's, are you interested in the webinar? And it's, oh, yes, you registered. And then immediately after the webinar, we sent out the replay. And so these are all trackable things, right? Now, wouldn't it be great to know if it's working or not? Wouldn't it be great to know? Like, I know, and this is this full, we at EAN, we love to be transparent like this. I know that, let me do the math, 10% of the people that clicked on my scheduling link to book a call with me booked a call. So I know that I can go to the other 90% and send them a direct email from my inbox, not their email service, and say, hey, I know that you were interested in a meeting with me. You know, I'm still open to meeting with you if you have time. And I can do that, and they're not going to be like, I never wanted to meet with you. I know they wanted to meet with me because they clicked on the link that said schedule time to meet with me, right? And listen, advisors, you could do the same thing. You could know who clicked on a link to meet with you because you've got a scheduling link, and then they didn't follow through, right? You could do that level of specificity, right? If you're intentional about it. So there's 1,000 different directions we could go with email marketing. Sky, I want to tell people how you can help them, how you actually work with people. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm showing right now, this is the product that Sky and his company produce. It is, I did not print it off. It is an 8.5 by 11. It is a printed document book. This one is 20 pages long. So tell me, Sky, what do you create, and then how can people check it out?
Yeah. So what you got there, and then again, if you're watching, what I've got here is it's called the Virtual Advisor, and it is a ironically enough, like you mentioned, it's a print newsletter. And
yeah, it's a deep irony in working with Sky. The Virtual Advisor sends you a printed off book, which is, it's like did it. So anyway, keep going.
Yeah. And so the way I like to think about it is it's a monthly marketing blueprint, essentially. And what we do is each month we send out a 20 to 24 page guide that takes a deep dive into a marketing or lead generation topic. We talk a lot about email, by the way, as well. One of our issues actually touches a lot on, that we did recently, touched a lot on storytelling, what we were talking about today. And we send it out. And the idea is, rather than touching on 10, 15 different tips you need to do every month, we take a deep dive on one topic: storytelling, developing a lead magnet, winning with Zoom and Zoom settings and all that kind of stuff. And basically the premise is we show you how to build sustainable lead gen systems into your business, whatever kind of business you're running as an advisor, whatever model you're using, without having to depend on buying leads, or without having to depend on referrals. And I mean, we all love referrals. It just is helpful. Sometimes you've got referrals, but you've also got, how can I organically develop leads month to month? And we kind of give you the blueprint each month in this newsletter. And so the newsletter is it's a subscription newsletter that we send out, and it comes with, you get the book every month, the marketing blueprint. You also get some video coaching that comes with it, with a little QR code in there. And there's a online community kind of thing, message board, where you can share ideas with other subscribers based on, how do you implement this? What does it look like in your practice? What are the results? I didn't know about
the online thing. So what URL should people go to? I'll make sure that it's in the show notes. So if you're listening to this, don't be tappy on your phone in the car, but I'll put this in the show notes as well, of where people can find you. And then also, you can tell people right now if they're at a place where they can type it in.
Yeah. And so I'd actually, Andy, I'll go ahead and offer, anyone who's listening to this, we'll go ahead and give you your first issue for free. Anyone who's listening to this, you can just, if you visit this link here, you'll just cover the shipping costs just to kind of help me out there. But other than that, I'll give you your first issue for free. If you go to joinadv.com/elite FA. So that's joinadv.com/elite FA. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. I think Andy will slide that in there. And if you head to that link there, it'll just take you there. And what you'll do is you'll just kind of put in your info there. Like I said, the first month will be free. You'll pay the few bucks there for the shipping and handling. and we'll be happy to do that if you like it. We'd love to see you stick around and subscribe. We've seen some really powerful results for advisors. If for some reason it's not your cup of tea, go ahead and cancel it. No hard feelings. Keep the issue. And I think we send over several kind of bonuses, digital bonuses as well. And you can, feel free to keep those as well. But I think we've heard some good things for it. And it's really just kind of some of the best marketing tactics that we are using and seeing the results. And we share those with insurance and financial advisors. And so appreciate you letting me mention that, Andy.
Yeah, our pleasure. I would remind folks that, Sten and I, we really believe in the who, not how. And who means like, don't go try to learn all these things over a 5-year period. I've been in the online space, online marketing for 15 years. And so, I was on Zoom before everybody was on Zoom. There's just certain things of, whether it's tagging or copy and all those things. And so one of the most generous things you can ever offer someone is all of your expertise boiled down to a smaller package. And I think that's what they're offering sort of month to month. So yeah, I would encourage you to go take them up on the offer, at least get the first month. Again, if you're digging it and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And I'm channeling my inner Sten here. An elite advisor would take that, schedule time on their calendar to go through it and implement it. And they would also include their administrator, whoever else would handle that, in on that discussion. Another way to do this and to make sure you implement. If you don't implement, you're not going to stick with it and you're going to be mad like it's Guy's fault. It's not his fault. He's the one who gave you the resource. Okay. So another way you can implement is when you get it, give it to your admin and say, I want you to look through this and give me 5 recommendations on something we could do. And then schedule a meeting with me and we'll go over those. And then when they say, hey, here's 5 things, you say, great, let's do number 2 and 4, and let's do them by the end of next week. There you go. Right. And it's implemented. And then you can say, hey, do you like this thing? And they're like, yeah, I dig it. Great. Let's keep it. And then they're going to be the ones to go through it for you. If you don't have an admin, then, you can do it yourself. But I think it's a who, not how, whether Sky's your who, and then your admin can be the who on how to implement this. And really empower your administrator or junior advisor to write some of these if you need help. But I hope that this episode has been helpful to get you going. And then also Sky's resource, Sky, thanks for offering that, will be a help to you all as well. And I want to wrap with this. If you are considering coming to our May event, we have started selling seats for that. You go to stenmorgan.com/how-to-live. That's stenmorgan.com/how-to-live. And we have added a guarantee to that event, which is that you will pay for the event within one of your first 4 proposals. And so if you go 0 for 2, we just ask that you would call us and we'll help you fix whatever you need to fix so you don't go 0 for 4. But if it does not pay for itself in your next 4 proposals, then we'll give you your money back. It's just that simple. So join us May 8th and 9th here at our offices outside of Nashville, Tennessee. It will be beautiful. It's already beautiful, but even more beautiful in May. Lots of hotels and entertainment nearby. Maybe you can go listen to some country music, right? So Sky, thank you again for being here today. Folks, thank you for listening. And if you have any questions for us, you can always reach out to us at stenmorgan.com/podcast. Sky, I appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.